Hi, I'm Matto, and welcome back to another devlog for Night Run. In this video, I'm going to talk through our approach to creating persistent procedural levels, some of the thinking behind that, and how it's going to play out in the game design. Let's get started. The thing I want to talk about in this video is the approach to procedural generation that we're taking in Night Run and kind of the broader thinking around procedural generation and what that means and some of the creative potential behind it. So procedural generation is an important content generation technique, actually both in the games world and in the NFT world. It's an interesting kind of unifying idea between the two spaces. In the games world, we have a long history of procedurally generated content. The roguelike genre is probably one of the genres that made this most famous with the original game Rogue, and then many of its followers, up to the present day with things like Dwarf Fortress, which is one of the kind of most ambitious procedural generation projects in the game world. No Man's Sky was another high-profile procedural generation game. Minecraft, obviously, kind of cultural juggernaut, very important and very procedurally driven. On the NFT side, procedural generation is most prominent in the generative art scene. Things like the Art Blocks platform, where you have a seed that's input into an algorithm at mint time, and that then chooses the visual output of the algorithm based on the code programmed by the generative artist. We also have generative properties in the profile picture or PFP genre, originated by CryptoPunks, right, where there were 10,000 pixelated heads, faces, with procedurally assigned varying traits and properties like hats and glasses and different skin tones and so on. And actually, I would argue that the procedural generation techniques are one of the ways that the current NFT metagame has been made possible, is because it's through being able to make 10,000 of something that are similar but different and unique that the non-fungible property of NFTs is meaningfully expressed. In Night Run, we're taking an approach to procedural generation which manifests in two ways. In the initial mode of the game that you'll first access when you play, it's a kind of a truly random run where it's running you through different seeds, different sectors, which are generated based on the values input by the NFT collectors, what art is going to show, what music is going to play, and what color palette is going to kind of color the city. But you're going to be seeing a pseudo-random procedural sequence of seeds, right? And that's kind of like the base game, initial game mode that you start in. And that really expresses some of the idea of procedural game making, where we hear people call things like an infinite runner, right? Like Night Run is definitely kind of adjacent to the infinite runner genre that's probably most popular on mobile games, kind of originally pioneered by Adam Saltzman's game Cannibal. And this promise of infinite content is one of the appeals of procedural games, right? That there's a system, the system can spit out a very, very large, effectively infinite number of variations, and you can kind of experience the system in many different ways again and again and again. And we see this in some of the games that I mentioned before, like Dwarf Fortress and Minecraft. No Man's Sky, on the other hand, has a kind of a different approach, which is using procedural generation as, I like to think of it as a kind of a form of compression, where we say we take this seed value, this algorithm, right, which is the world generation or level generation code, we put them together and we create a reproducible result. And this reproducibility is really important. I think the first game that I heard about that was really using this approach was the original DOS-based game Elite Dangerous, where you could explore thousands and thousands of procedurally generated but persistent planets, and it would fit on a 1.4 megabyte floppy disk. And that felt like magic. How was that possible, right? That they could fit this universe of unique planets onto this floppy disk. Well, it was through this kind of compression mechanism that the combination of the seed value and the world generation code will reliably reproduce the world each time you run it. And this is the approach that we've taken with Night Run. Night Run uses seeded procedural generation, meaning when I put in the seed for, let's say, run number 55, it's going to start in the same way and it's going to proceed in the same way all the way through the run for as long as I play. And so if I return to seed number 55 and start the run again, I'm going to experience the same sequence of world tiles, sequence of sectors, see the same artworks, hear the same sequence of music, and so on. And for me, this is a important idea because I want the world of the game to feel knowable. I want this to feel like a real world, even if it is a procedurally generated one, and even if it's not an open world, right? It's a very linear world where you have to drive down the track to experience it. But I really like the idea that players might be able to have experiences or impressions about the world and share them with one another. And part of the NFT layer of saying, okay, collectors can make these curatorial choices that are then reflected in a shared experience of the world. That's important to me because it's not a multiplayer game. You're always alone in the world, but it is a world that you're experiencing collectively with other people through Discord, forums, other media of the internet. So this idea of creating a kind of a compressed and then unfolded, shared world that players are experiencing and making changes to, or that the NFT collectors are making changes to and players are experiencing, is kind of at the heart of Night Run, right? And this is, for me, one of the important and interesting dimensions of procedural generation. And actually, there's an interesting other kind of resonant theme here, which is the use of text-to-image generation in the Night Run NFT collection artwork for the imaginary fashion houses in the project. We can think of the text-to-image models being created by companies like Stable Diffusion, which is the model that I use to generate the images for the collection. These are also a form of compression, right? What they're doing is they're taking terabytes and terabytes of image data scraped from the internet, right? Which I know there's controversy over and people have different opinions about. And they're analyzing that and compressing it down into the model file, which is like a 1 gigabyte file. We have this extremely compressed representation of kind of the meaning of that data. And then we can drop a new seed in the form of a prompt into that model and reproduce images. And if we drop that same prompt in, it's gonna kind of pachinko through latent space of the model and uncover new images or similar images, variants on images. And you see that in the Night Run collection, right? In the Aurea house, there are a series of portraits, which are basically full-face portraits of these women with these hoods. And those are all variants from a kind of basically from a single image. It's a kind of a little cluster in latent space where I kind of hit this one image that I really liked and I just kept spitting out new variations on it. And you see if you kind of overlay them over each other, you can see they're all structurally very similar. A lot of the posing, the lighting, it's all very similar, but the kind of faces are different, which is a kind of really interesting element of the way that these algorithms work. So in my mind, these machine learning models are doing a similar kind of compression to what we have been exploring for years through procedural generation. And that's kind of some of the artistic resonance between one approach to generation, the kind of text-to-image generation executed in the NFT collection, and then the world generation approach taking place in Unity in the game part of the project. That's actually what we're really kind of actively working on right now. We're building the kind of spine of the game, which is the level generator, making sure everything is spitting out deterministically and working, and we're kind of almost through all of that. And then we'll be able to start testing and verifying that we've got an approach that we like, and then I can kind of document that a little bit for you all and share kind of piece by piece how it's come together. So as always, thank you so much for watching. Drop a like for the algorithm, drop a comment if you have a question, and if you're not subscribed, please consider doing so. And as always, thanks so much for watching, and I will see you in the next video. Bye.